Let's dive right into this explainer and decode something we've probably all experienced. Dating the exact same person, just in a different font. We've all been there, right? Or at least we know someone who has. You get stuck in this wild loop of relationships that feel incredibly intense, yet somehow end up crashing and burning in the exact same way every single time. Well, today we're going to blend psychological and Vedic astrology to unpack the hidden blueprints driving your love life, and way more importantly, talk about how you can actually rewrite them. Actually, ask yourself this right off the bat. Have you been trapped in one of those exhausting on-again, off-again cycles that just refuses to fully end? You know the drill. You break up, the distance creates this unbearable pull, you get back together, the passion reignites, and then boom, the exact same toxic dynamic resurfaces. It feels like terrible luck, or maybe a sign that you're just meant to suffer in love. But what if I told you it's not random at all? I absolutely love this quote from our sources. Karmic love is not a punishment. It's a curriculum. If you're sitting there trying to figure out why you keep attracting the exact same struggles, I promise you, it isn't a curse. According to Vedic astrology, it's a profound energetic loop. You are essentially repeating a class because there's an unresolved emotion, a deep attachment, or a lesson about your own self-worth that is literally begging for conscious transformation. Until you actually learn it, the universe is just going to kindly keep sending you different teachers. All right, moving into our first section, your cosmic mirror, the 7th house.
Okay, so in astrology, the 7th house acts as a literal mirror. It reflects our own unintegrated shadow traits right back at us, usually through our partners. To really get this, we have to look at the descendant, which is the doorway to your 7th house. Mathematically, it sits exactly opposite your ascendant, your outward personality. And because it's your exact opposite, the descendant holds all the qualities you unconsciously suppress or feel like you completely lack. So you end up magnetically drawn to people who possess those exact behaviors. If you are naturally super structured and rational, you might find yourself repeatedly attracting chaotic, highly emotional partners. You aren't just attracting them, you are unconsciously hiring them to play out the parts of your own psyche that you've been ignoring. And what's really fascinating is how specific planets parked in your 7th house dictate the exact flavor of your relationship friction. Check out these patterns. If you've got Mars here, your pattern is likely constant conflict and power struggles. The fix? Channeling that fiery energy into literal teamwork or shared physical goals. Now, Venus sounds lovely, but it actually often leads to over-idealizing a partner and totally losing your independence, meaning your healing direction is cultivating radical self-worth. And if strict Saturn is sitting in your 7th house, your relationships are probably plagued by a deep fear of loss, which breeds controlling behaviors. The curriculum there is practicing profound trust. Let's shift gears to section 2, the moon and emotional karma. So if the 7th house is what initially draws you in, the moon is what happens behind closed doors. Psychological astrologers point out that our moon signs act as the recording device for our deepest and honestly often painful emotional habits. Different moons literally speak entirely different languages. Imagine a couple where one person has a Taurus moon. They absolutely need physical touch and hugs to feel safe. But the other has a Gemini moon, which totally needs intellectual space and to talk things out. When they fight, the Taurus moon goes in for a hug, and the Gemini moon pulls away to think. Without understanding this, Taurus feels unloved and Gemini feels suffocated. But viewing this through the lens of astrology completely depersonalizes the conflict. It's no longer, you don't love me. It's just, hey, we have clashing celestial needs. It removes the blame and shame entirely. And this understanding brings us to a massive, absolutely crucial distinction: trauma bonding versus soul connections. It is so incredibly easy to confuse an intense, crazy passion with a meant-to-be soulmate. But guys, often that electric magnetic pull, that is a trauma bond. It's just two people whose unresolved childhood wounds fit together perfectly like jagged puzzle pieces, and you're bonding over dysfunction. A true soul connection, however, might not even start with that chaotic spark. It is rooted in mutual growth, consciousness, and compassionate learning. We really have to challenge the myth that intensely difficult automatically means fated. Moving on to section 3, agents of chaos, the outer planets. So what's actually happening when a relationship is way too volatile to survive, but feels way too magnetic to just let die? Well, overlapping two birth charts, which is called synastry, brilliantly illustrates this. Astrologers look for aspect lines, these geometric angles connecting your planets. When outer planets like Pluto or Uranus form tight angles with your partner's personal planets, they create invisible locks.
Pluto binds you through intense, almost psychological addiction. Uranus binds through emotional electricity and sudden, unpredictable whiplash. These energetic webs literally make certain people feel impossible to walk away from, even when your logic is screaming at you to run. Those invisible locks create a devastatingly predictable timeline. See if this sounds familiar. Step 1. A Uranian disruption causes a sudden, explosive breakup. Step 2. Instead of moving on, plutonic distance kicks in, where the silence actually amplifies your obsession. Step 3. A Venus transit rolls around, softening the memories and renewing the attraction. And finally, step 4, a Martian trigger gives someone the impulsive courage to send that "I miss you" text, sparking the reunion. The hard truth I want you to realize here is that in these dynamics, breakups are often just astrological resets. They're not true endings. The cycle is just going to keep spinning. Let's hit section 4, Saturn and Karmic lessons. If you want to know how to stop that spinning, we have to look at Saturn and the lunar nodes. These are the strict teachers of the zodiac that bind us to destiny until we actually mature. Saturn is the planet of karma, boundaries, and emotional maturity. It creates tests that you simply must pass. Then you have the lunar nodes in Vedic astrology, Rahu, which drives these obsessive, unquenchable desires toward a partner, and Ketu, which demands spiritual detachment. When your chart locks with someone else's nodes, you are dealing with deep, past life echoes. And here's the kicker. You cannot escape the dynamic by just blocking their number. You only escape when you actually learn the lesson, which is almost always about establishing boundaries and realizing your own self-worth. True separation only happens when Saturn finally decides the burden outweighs the growth. Which brings us to section 5, how to break the cycle. All right, let's pivot from the heavy diagnosis to the actual cure. How do we shift from feeling like victims of fate to exercising active free will? Here are the exact practical steps from both Vedic astrology and psychotherapy to dismantle these repetitive loops. Step 1. Identify the emotional theme, not the person. Are you always feeling abandoned, always feeling controlled? Focus entirely on the feeling, not the X. Step 2. Forgive and release. Holding on to anger just keeps the karmic cord attached. Gratitude neutralizes the energetic debt. Step 3. Strengthen your lagna, your ascendant. This means investing heavily in your own identity and hobbies so you aren't completely dependent on a partner for validation. And step 4. Consciously integrate your shadow traits. Start doing the things you usually rely on a partner to do for you. I really want you to absorb this core concept. Liberation is not the absence of relationships, but the presence of conscious ones. When you actually sit down and do this internal work, when you integrate your shadow and understand your emotional moon language, the old triggers simply lose their power. You'll literally wake up one day and realize that peace has finally become vastly more important to you than drama. That is exactly when the universe knows the lesson is complete, and you'll begin attracting partners who are ready to build, rather than partners who are just there to trigger you. So, I leave you with this final thought. Are you ready to graduate from your karmic curriculum? Your birth chart is not a life sentence. It's a map. And now that you know exactly how to read the repeating signs, you have the power to step out of the loop and take responsibility for mastering your own stars. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep observing, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.